Shana Tova, Gmar Chatima Tova, Shavua Tov. It's one of those days that we can say basically like whatever nice thing comes to our mind and start with that. So that's actually nice. I'm very honored and humbled to be teaching today. I've been teaching for many, many, many years. It feels like much more pressure now that I started rabbinical school. However, I want to remind everyone that I have been through rabbinical school for only 3 weeks. So I have not more expertise than I had before beginning rabbinical school. So so today what I would like to do is I would like to focus on one verse and then bring 3 stories, one from the Torah, one from the Mishnah, and one from the Talmud, to talk about forgiveness. However, I don't want to do all the talking and I don't want to do all the reading. So we're going to do it together. I will try to talk like for a little bit, but then I will open to questions. So we'll start with an umbrella verse that we say, Yom Kippur. We said it yesterday before the Chatzi Kaddish. We said, and I will sing it for a little bit, it might bring like the memory from yesterday. We say, Ki bayom hazeh yechaper alechem etchem mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai titau. And it says something like, for on this day, atonement shall made for you to cleanse you of all your sins. That's basically kind of magic. You shall be clean before the Lord. So again, Rachel, if you just can put the verse on the camera and just take it, we will read it and we'll take it off camera so I can see you and we can talk a little bit about that. So it says, for on this day, atonement shall be made for you to cleanse you of all your sins. You shall be clean before the Lord. Okay, so that's the verse we are going to try to deal with. And what I try to do is I brought a story from the Torah about this. I brought a story from the Mishnah and a story from the Talmud. Okay, we can take that from there. And Rachel, thank you so much for helping me with sharing the screen. So there are 2 different statements there. What are the statements in this verse? Just raise your hand or just answer or whatever works for you. Don't be shy. We are all friends. No right and wrong answers.
Well, it says that atonement will be made for you.
Okay, that's exactly the point. It says it will be made for you. However, the second part say, you shall be clean. So which one is it? Is it going to be made for me? It sounds like a lot of magic there and it sounds like very not realistic, or I shall be clean. And if so, how do I do it? So that's the question. So who thinks that atonement can be made for me, if anyone?
Well, I think maybe it's that we're given the opportunity to atone.
Okay, excellent, Audrey. We are giving the opportunity, yes?
The structure.
Okay, perfect. So the day, what it's saying here, that this day will give me the structure to approach atonement. Okay, that's an excellent answer. Anyone? Someone? Okay. So we'll go with the first story. We usually, when we read the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, we read the creation of the world, we read Adam v'Chava, Adam and Eve, then we read about Noah, and then there is a beautiful story about Abraham and a king, King Avimelech, that we usually kind of skip. So I would like to very, very quick to read a few verses from the story, and then I will ask you a few questions about who's the victim, who's the perpetrator, who has to ask for forgiveness, and why the story is the way it's written. Okay, so Rachel, we'll go with the first source in Genesis 20. And I need a volunteer to read, so I don't feel that lonely. So we'll read the English, like the red, and we'll go from there.
I'll read.
Okay.
Abraham journeyed from there to the region of the Negeb and settled between Kadesh and Shur while he was sojourning there in Gerar. Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. I need it to scroll down a bit. Thank you. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "You are to die because of the woman that you have taken, for she is a married woman." Now Abimelech did not approach her. He said, "O Lord, will you slay people even though innocent?" He himself said to me, "She is my sister." And she also said, "He is my brother. When I did this, my heart was blameless and my hands were clean." And God said to him in the dream, "I knew that you did this with a blameless heart, and so I kept you from sinning against me. That was why I did not let you touch her."
Okay, let's wait there just a minute, and let's go to the big screen. Okay, so summary of the story. Avram told Avimelech that Sarai was his sister. She was her sister, his sister. So and then Avimelech, she was like pretty, and he was about to do something, but he didn't do anything. However, Avimelech is culpable, is liable for doing something that was wrong. And God actually comes to him at night and he says he did something that wasn't like the right thing to do. So my first question is, who's right, who's wrong? So Avimelech is, yes.
Isn't there a backstory that I've forgotten on why Abraham said she was his sister?
Yes, there is.
I've forgotten what that was. Remind us of that.
Yes, there is a backstory. There was like in the kingdom, he wanted actually to go there. He wanted to get food, and he was afraid that he would get killed if it wasn't because of her. Now, there is always a backstory, right? But my question, and I just want to go back to the story so we can do the other two, is Avimelech sincerely didn't know Sarai was Abraham's wife. And he was about to make a mistake. So my question is, whose fault is it?
I would rather not say fault, right? I think Abraham had a compelling reason to not disclose that Sarah was his wife, right? He felt he was traveling in a hostile, through a hostile kingdom, and he did it for self-protection, even though it was misguided. So I don't like to use wrong or right or at fault. I think he had a compelling reason, but through his lie, he created a scenario in which a person was about to sin, and it was God who had to step in and prevent it. He also put his wife at risk for something else. So he put two other people at risk through his, sin of omission.
Excellent point, Cheryl. Excellent point. Yeah, there is a backstory. Jean is right. Cheryl is right. And it didn't mean to harm, but like the way things were happening, Sarai was about to be approached by Avimelech, and then finally God intervenes and nothing happens.
And I think the thing here is, right, it's that sometimes we do wrong by not meaning it, and we still have to atone, right? Because I think moving on, Abraham apologizes to Avimelech, and he asks, does he ask for forgiveness?
Okay, so we will read that part of the story in a little bit, but let's see actually who ended up asking for forgiveness. So, so excellent point. Anyone want to like say something else about this particular part of the story?
Well, I think that when you are doing something that you know has a wrong portion, you can justify in your own mind why you're doing it, but there's a part of you that knows that there's could be things, and that's your subconscious saying. And so at some levels, I think a lot of our behavior, my behavior, falls along those lines. And a lot of times I need to, and it doesn't work out the way I usually think it's going to. And so that's why for me, trying to be truthful, and the atonement for me then can be that I'm willing to face the consequences of that rather than the consequences of creating a series and set in motion things that oftentimes go different than I think they're going to, and usually worse.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
And yet, I think it needs to be pointed out that Avram's lie is self-serving. He's trying to save himself. He is, you could say he is protecting Sarai, but no, her fate could very likely be the same, regardless of what Avram says about their relationship. It's just a question of what Avimelech is going to be doing before Sarai meets her fate. And Avram's lie is just protecting himself, because if he is her brother, well, that then means she's available. But if he is her husband, then she is not available until he is removed from the scene. So he is protecting himself, attempting to protect himself from being removed from the scene, which is why I say it's self-serving.
So the reason I actually chose this story, it's because I read it at JTS in one of my classes, and I never actually read it this way. It's the first time that I understand the concept of there are two sides of a story. We always said that. We always said, oh, when we have our kids come to us, and so we listen to one side. Many times we don't listen to both, and we don't actually listen to the background of each one of the parts of the story. So I thought that this story about forgiveness and about asking forgiveness was like very explanatory of how do we have always two sides of the story. I don't mean actually to say that Avimelech is right, or Sarai is right, or Avram is right, even though I have my own thought. I just want us to think like brother on forgiveness and the sides of the story, and how many times we actually feel like this one should ask forgiveness and should say sorry to me, but actually there was something else that I maybe have done that I don't have that in account when actually judging. So the end of the story, as one of you said, we will we'll see in a minute in the verse. It's very, very interesting. The one who has to ask for forgiveness is, wants to spoil it? Who wants to guess?
Avimelech?
Avimelech, yeah, Avimelech. And Who is asking forgiveness? He's asking, of course he's asking Sarai, right? Because she was the victim. But no, that's what we thought, what I would think, you know, she will go and apologize to Sarai for being actually used as in this situation, but no, let's see, what does it say? Rachel, can you just put the last 2-3 verses? It says there, therefore, who wants to read?
Can I do it?
Yeah, perfect. Just if you want to read, take yourself off mute.
Okay. Therefore, restore the man's wife, since he is a prophet. He will intercede for you to save your life. If you fail to restore her, know that you shall die, you and all that are yours. Early next morning, Abimelech called his servants and told them all what happened. And the men were greatly frightened.
Okay, so let's go back to the big screen. So he said, God says to Abimelech in a dream, go restore his wife, and he will pray for you. Now, why? Because Abimelech because Abraham is a prophet. So that's what you have to do. You go ask for forgiveness, and then it says that Abraham actually is going to pray for Abimelech. Now, are we satisfied with the outcome of the story? Jennifer, you're doing, no, Jennifer, why not?
I guess I'm thinking that, you know, taking in the context of the times, women were property. And so why would you ask a possession for forgiveness?
Okay.
You know, in today's times, no, I'm not satisfied, but in the context of the times, it was certainly seen as appropriate.
Okay. So when we think that's actually a great point, let's try to bring it to our own days with that story without actually those details, but just in our mind. And there was another Jennifer that also was doing no, Jennifer.
Well, I was thinking kind of the same thing in that Abraham, right, he lied, it was self-serving, and Abimelech didn't know, but what could Sarah have done, you know, in that moment when it's about to happen? She has every incentive to tell the truth, both for herself and to protect both men from sin. So why wouldn't she say anything?
Oh, wow, that's actually a great point. And I did not think about it, but that's a great point. So there are 3 sides of the story. Okay, so perfect, even better. Okay, yeah, Audrey.
I was just going to make things even more complicated because.
Oh, don't do that. Okay, please.
There was a class I was in with Rabbi Graber, and one of the things that was discussed was our responsibility to protect life, including protecting our own life. And when you throw that on top of what Abraham did, what he was doing was, even forget about Sarah, but he was fulfilling that by doing what he thought he had to do to protect his own life.
Okay, that's an excellent point, and I won't argue with you. Now, I want everyone to know that I don't have the right answer. I struggle with the story, and it actually, it helps me to bring a new perspective on the topic of forgiveness. So because, like everyone else said, yes, just a minute, like everyone else said, like there is this side of the story and there is that side of the story and there is like the other side of the story, and it's not that simple. So it's not like that simple that Avimelech was about to sin and he has to ask for forgiveness, and it's his obligation to do so. And then Avraham is the one who interceding before God, and God forgives, or Avraham forgives Avimelech. It's not like that simple of a story. Yes.
So I wanted to respond to what Jennifer had said, because that was my first thought as well. My first reaction had been when you first asked who's supposed to ask for forgiveness and who should Abimelech ask for forgiveness from. And of course it should be Sarah. But then I thought the exact same thing as Jennifer, which is, well, shouldn't Sarah be able to speak for herself? And then comes the dilemma of how do we make our own choices? If we take it from what the other Jennifer said about the time, right? Sarah can't say anything. She either has, like, she's sinning no matter what she does. She allows this to happen to her because she's not saying anything, or she is going against her husband and exposing his lie. Either way, she loses. This is not a good place for Sarah at all.
Okay, excellent point. Now, I love the way you're engaging, and this is the way I want us to approach forgiveness for the rest of the day. Sometimes, and we will read like another story and maybe the third one, but when we expect from someone to ask for forgiveness, I want us to think about this story and like all the sides. I know I can't deal with the chat and everything, but Rachel just wrote that Susanna Bell raised her hand very, very patiently, and I want her to talk before we move on to the story of the Talmud, and then we'll go back and everyone will talk. But I promise Rabbi Graber will be back by 11. So, but the story, if this story is complicated, wait until we read the story from the Talmud. I really want us to think about forgiveness like from a different approach. Susanna.
Yeah, I was just going to make a small comment. I missed part of the beginning, so I don't want to be chiming in on things I missed. But someone made a comment about how all these different perspectives, and I was just going to say I think that's part of the beauty of Judaism and kind of the point of all these nine laws, that it's not one-sided, two-sided, three-sided, that every single one of these stories, I hope we can approach looking at and seeing how important it is to remember that our singular perspective is one angle, and the same situation is just such a kaleidoscope. And that was, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So I want us to think when we do Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi, like all of those, and we're so hard on ourselves and we're so hard on others, I want us to think about like the big picture. I know they're like, I know I have two screens. I'm honored to have two screens of people. So please, I don't know, Rachel, if you could help me, if I don't want to miss anyone, and I don't want to, if someone wants to talk, I really want to give an opportunity. Yes, Tommy Baler in the other room of the 400 square feet apartment.
Okay, so I wanted to like add on to like how you said the perspective, like how we would say it in these times, like when you're saying sorry, like for Toshlik or something like that, you could think about what would the other person say, because you were talking yesterday at breakfast. At breakfast, that you can forgive someone, but you can still punish them. Like if someone says, Mom, I'm sorry, I did this, and then you said, I forgive you. But before that, let's say the mom said, no TV until next week. Then you could say, I forgive you, but then the kid would say, oh, so now I can watch TV. But no, you can't watch TV. I just forgave you. That doesn't mean that you still have the punishment. Like, it matters from each person's perspective, like from the person who's saying sorry, and from the person who's forgiving, or from the person who's like just in the middle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tommy. And I'm glad actually you listened to my teaching yesterday about the difference in between punishment and forgiveness. So forgiving someone doesn't mean that you don't punish. And that's exactly right. And we are going to talk about it in a minute. Okay, now we are going to go to a story from the Talmud, from Ta'anit. It's a very, very famous story. We are going to read the story in English, and then we are going to, we're going to talk about a few questions. Rachel, if you can put in the, just the blue one, the very last one. And then we'll go back to the Mishnah. Okay, so I need a reader who will read like the story in the blue. We don't have to read the Hebrew.
I'll read. Oh, go ahead.
Jennifer, I was going to ask you to read.
Jennifer Graber? There are a couple of us. Okay. Okay. The sages further taught in praise of the reed. A person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar. An incident occurred in which Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, came from Migdal Gador, from his rabbi's house, and he was riding on a donkey and strolling on the bank of the river. And he was very happy, and his head was swollen with pride because he had studied much Torah.
Rachel, can you please scroll?
He happened upon an exceedingly ugly person who said to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi." But Rabbi Elazar did not return his greeting. Instead, Rabbi Elazar said to him, "Worthless person, how ugly is that man? Are all the people of your city as ugly as you?" The man said to him, "I do not know, but you should go and say to the craftsman who made me, 'How ugly is the vessel you made?'" When Rabbi Elazar realized that he had sinned and insulted this man merely on account of his appearance, he descended from his donkey and prostrated himself before him. And he said to the man, "I have sinned against you. Forgive me." The man said to him, "I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and say, 'How ugly is the vessel you made?'" He walked behind the man, trying to appease him, until they reached Rabbi Elazar's city. The people of his city came out to greet him, saying to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi, my master, my master." The man said to them, "Who are you calling my rabbi, my rabbi?" They said to him, "To this man who is walking behind you." He said to them, "If this man is a rabbi, may there not be many like him among the Jewish people?" They asked him, "For what reason do you say this?" He said to them, "He did such and such to me." They said to him, "Even so, forgive him, as he is a great Torah scholar." He said to them, "For your sakes I forgive him, provided that he accepts upon himself not to become accustomed to behave like this." Immediately, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, entered the study hall and taught. A person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar, as one who is proud like a cedar is likely to sin. And therefore, due to its gentle qualities, the reed merited that a quill is taken from it to write with it a Torah scroll, phylacteries, and mezuzot.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. That's one of the most powerful stories for me. I approached this Yom Kippur struggling with this particular one. First question, what was wrong that Rabbi Elazar did? It seems like a very simple question. Yeah, Susanna.
I would say I think that there's really good imagery in that with the horse, that he's coming from having learned so much. His head is full, he is up high, but it's almost like Torah is not just of God. It's about bringing it to the people and how we present it. And that this is an example of when it's all in your head and you're up in a horse and you're disconnected, you might miss the point of the lessons. And to me, it's kind of like time helps to integrate things. And and the rest of the story kind of shows that too, even the order of the struggle of like, which order do we forgive? Do we ask God first or do we ask the person? So to me, what he did wrong was filled himself so full in his head that there was not space for it to seep down and be grounded and presented. For just learning isn't really helpful if you're not connected to those that you can then help.
Okay, so a little bit of a background. He's coming back from studying, like, to become a rabbi, and like he's going back to that congregation that hired him and invested like in his studies, and so like he is just has all this knowledge and he's coming back. Yes, Audrey.
And part of it for me was that even more important than having all of this knowledge and studying is being a decent human being and being compassionate and kind. And his initial response is it's totally cruel and denigrating. I mean, not only does he insult this person being ugly, he's like, so is everyone else in your city this ugly? I mean,
yeah,
there's very little he could have said that would have been more hurtful.
Yes. Elliot.
You know, also, I was thinking about the sin itself. You know, he's making a judgment on the way the person looks. If you apply today's time, judging people on their appearances and not who they are, then he's making a blanket statement about the whole community. And we're, you know, this is very poignant to what's going on today. And we look at people that are different or look strange, and we make judgments. Don't know who they are, what they're about. So that is the first thing that struck me, not who he was apologizing to, which is the next part of it, but what he did in the initial sin.
Okay, perfect. So anyone else? Yes, Steve. Steven, yeah.
Perhaps the person was handicapped or racially different.
Yeah. Yes.
Other.
Yes. I will ask
Lynn
you.
and Tommy have comment.
Oh, who? I don't.
Lynn,
Lynn.
go ahead.
Yes, please. Thank you, Rachel.
Unmute yourself, Lynn.
I was just thinking how the rabbi was on a donkey, and it could be that, you know, the expression now is get off your high horse. So he was considering himself above everybody.
Exactly right. And we are going to go to that point of descending the donkey. That's an excellent point. And we'll go, yes. Tommy.
So I like Disney movies, and there's one quote that's really cool. The cover is not the book. It's in a very fun song. The cover is not the book. And it really shows in this story how if someone's ugly, their spirit's not ugly.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Tommy.
May I add something?
Yes, please.
In today's psychology, you might say that it was a projection. If he had such a hard time with this other person's appearance, it leads you to believe that there's something very insecure inside of him, and his comment is a mirror to himself to do his own work.
Okay, excellent, Michelle. Rachel, do I have anyone else that I missed?
Giselle, just one other thing.
Yes.
We've tended to focus on the first half of this story, and in the spirit of what you've described from the previous story, I want to focus on the second half and just say.
Thank you for that. I was actually going to ask you to do it.
The anger of the person who received the insult is understandable, but yet he conditions his ability to forgive on increasingly other things. And while I understand that, it also, I think, is damaging to him, and it makes the complexity of this story, you know, because really the only one who can forgive the rabbi is this person. No one else can forgive him for this. And so I just find it more complex. I don't have an answer.
Adam, thank you so much for bringing that. So we all feel like the rabbi was wrong, and he was wrong. And of course, we expect from a rabbi to never be wrong and to be perfect and to never say anything that hurt anyone. But the reality is that that's not going to happen, never, because a rabbi is a person. And this rabbi, Rabbi Elazar, made a mistake. And like Adam said, we are all, and including myself, we are focusing on the poor man that the rabbi said, you're ugly. And that's what we are focused on. However, we are not focused about like the 5 other steps that the rabbi did when he realized he made a mistake. Because they were things he did when he realized he made a mistake. A human being, that a rabbi is a human being, they make mistakes. We all make mistakes. What do we do with the mistakes? That's a different question. Now, the rabbi actually didn't insist on hurting this man. There are several steps here in the story. However, we can't focus on that because we are so obsessed in what like he did wrong and how terrible. He's coming from a yeshiva, is coming from JTS, studied like 5 years, is going back, and the first thing he does is saying something that is hurtful, and he's hurting someone. That's unforgivable. And we forget about like the second, like Adam said, like the second part of the story is like not even relevant.
So I have a question then. What does it mean to, I mean, so the rabbi ran after the guy and begged for forgiveness, right? But I think, you know, the man who was insulted makes a good point. Like, you know, you don't only, I understand, and Adam said it's complicated. You don't only, it's not only he who was insulted, it's the other people in his town, but it's also an insult in a way. He said, well, what about the creator who made me, right? I mean, go back and think about that. And I guess it raises the question, right? What does it mean to ask for forgiveness? And is it okay to not be satisfied with the request for forgiveness?
Okay.
Or to feel that the request was somehow maybe not sincere, or that the atonement wasn't satisfactory or true, or sincere. I mean, we hear that the rabbi kept like following him or stalking him. Like,
I just want to, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to add that it's not that he said, I'm sorry.
Right.
So there's like a few steps that actually we read them very, very fast for the sake of time. First, he descended from the donkey. So it's not that he asked for forgiveness being on the donkey. So that's like one thing that we do. We descend from where we are and we level ourselves to someone else.
Okay.
And he did that.
And then he prostrated
and
himself.
After that, he said, Chatati, I have sinned. So there is a second step. It's not that he said, oh, I'm sorry, let's move on. It's like, yes, Jennifer and I will finish my idea. But Cheryl, that's a very, very good point. How sincere are we when we actually ask for forgiveness? And the story, we read it a bit fast, but it has like about 4 steps before it's actually like the process is complete. Yes, Jennifer.
Well, so like someone mentioned earlier, this person could have like had a disability or been like a different race. And I feel like if you think about it in that context, it's like if Rabbi Elazar is the kind of person who makes that judgment right away. Well, he's met this one person and this person said something, he apologizes to that one person, but has he really changed his view? You know, like, is he going to make the same snap judgment again? So I feel like it's not that the man isn't giving him forgiveness after you did all these steps, but he's saying you have to go you have to see the whole town. You have to see all of us. You have to see that it's not just me. You know, you kind of have to change your view and not just change this one scenario.
Yeah, I love what
it also takes us back to Tommy's point of there's a difference between forgiveness, but still having to put up with the consequences of your behavior.
Exactly. So when we forgive, and it's not something that it's easy, and I have it very, very clear, but when we, at least I try to teach my kids, when they hurt me and I say, you know, when they, you know, lie or do something and I say no TV and they come and say, oh, I'm sorry. And I say, okay. And then they say, oh, can I watch TV now? I said, no, like the TV is off like the table, but the forgiveness, it's a different thing. So yes.
Susanna?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I mean, part of what I love about the story I find beautiful is how flawed those characters are and how much they learn, because that's what makes them like so relatable to me. Like, this rabbi messed up and then he learns from someone else. This other person, just by living, shows him that simply saying I'm sorry is wonderful, but if a wound is really deep, we have to continue to show we are sorry. And saying I am sorry does not mean a person has to immediately say, I forgive you.
Exactly.
And sometimes, you know, it's like I knock over a glass of milk. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no problem. It's okay. I'll clean it up. But if you hit me in my core, it actually feels like it can be putting the impetus on the person who was hurt to ask them to forgive really quickly. Now, that said, I'd say that character also is kind of stiff. But by the end, by bringing in the whole community, I feel like they all can be more like reeds together, like you were saying, and have this where we get to see that a rabbi can only learn so much from the yeshiva. And part of learning is connecting.
Yeah. Thank you, Susanna. Isaiah's grandma.
There, go. One of the questions I have is when the rabbi and the man come to the rabbi's students, why do they react to the, why do they seem to be that they embrace the rabbi? They try to soothe him for the guilt he feels, as opposed to, you know, saying maybe you know, questioning the rabbi and, you know, having him express, you know, his sin to them. He hasn't, you know, apologized. He should apologize to his students, and his students should demand something from him.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So that feeling that the rabbi shouldn't get like any forgiveness is something that comes as like the first reaction. However, if we go deeper in the story, we can see that the rabbi, a human being, made a mistake, a very bad one, but he did like a long process to ask for forgiveness. And the end of the story is we should be soft like a reed and not stiff as a cedar. Now, for who actually the lesson is also debatable. Now, again, this is another story. I don't have the answer. However, what I can tell you that a rabbi can make a mistake, a doctor can make a mistake. Of course, everyone can make a mistake. What do we do with the mistake, and how do we ask for forgiveness, and what are the sides of the forgiveness are for us to think throughout the Day of Atonement. So how is that we are going to become clean of sins? It's about thinking that there is like more to the story than just the story that I hear or just the story that I read. So as Susanna said, these are real people with real mistakes. So I wanted just to bring you this story. We will talk a bit more about that, and then I want to go to the Mishnah. Did I miss
Diane and
anyone?
Raina had comments.
Okay, and I see Linda, now I went to the second. So Hinda and then Raina, please.
Did you mean for me to?
Hinda, you have to unmute. Hinda and then Raina and then Stephen.
So if he's going to use that kind of language, if the rabbi's going to use that language to the man, what makes you think that he didn't do it before? That he, I don't think he should, I don't think he thought anything wrong of it until the man reacted.
Yeah, that's a good point, Hinda. Yeah, that's a very good point.
So he really shouldn't be forgiven, or because he has to change more than just that one man.
Yeah, even though we have like a few lawyers in the two screens, I'm not planning to actually judge or say if actually anyone is liable. I just want to bring the story. I have actually marked my perspective, Hinda, but I do hear your point. If he did it, maybe he did it before. But even if he did it before, does anyone does he deserve forgiveness?
Because he's hurt all these people. He's like the feathers in the pillow.
Right. That's exactly.
So, it's worse.
Yeah, that's actually, you have a point there. Yes, I will answer in a minute. I like my answer, that it's not the right answer, but it's just my approach. So I want Raina and Stephen and then Michelle and Jennifer, and yes, and Elliot and everyone, yes.
So
Raina.
at the beginning of the story where they talk about how you should be soft like a reed and not, rigid like a cedar. And at that point, the man's on the donkey and he's filled with pride and he's kind of rigid in feeling so high about himself that he would speak down to someone like that. And then, but he immediately does see his wrong and takes action, tries to ask for forgiveness. And then what struck me at the end of the story is when the community says that the rabbi should be forgiven, it made me think about taking into account, because sometimes we're so hard on ourselves and hard on others when they make mistakes, as we all do, and to take into account the whole person. And they repeat the line about being soft like a reed and not rigid, that it also applies to us as, as the person. It also applies not just to how we act, but also to how we receive and how we react.
Excellent point. Yeah. I promised Stephen and then Elliot, and I want you to think while everyone else is talking, I need someone to defend the rabbi. It can be Jennifer Graber or it can be anyone else, but I need someone to defend the rabbi. So think about that before we end. I need someone to defend the rabbi. Yes, Stephen.
I like Rena's point. And I was just thinking that about the future of this story, what happens after. In the beginning of the story, we all agreed that the rabbi was learned, but his knowledge was insufficient. It was really not complete knowledge. He thought it was, and he may have been ordained, and he may have been, whatever. But he didn't use his knowledge with sechel, really. And but at the end of the story, the students, and this is what Raina, I think, was saying, the students then say, well, we have to be, forgiving, you should be like a reed. And I was just thinking that all of us who are learned in some way, who are teachers, are obligated to pass these experiences on, these mistakes on, so that the students can learn better and incorporate that into their model.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe that's where the kind of question that this story is sending.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the future of the story will make like the difference. If we would know like what happened after, we can know actually if he learned the lesson. Do you think like anyone think that actually the man that was hurt needs to learn a lesson too? Yes.
I think the
Diane
rabbi,
Markov has been waiting. Oh, sorry.
the rabbi did a lot of didn't just ask for forgiveness. He did a lot of actions in furtherance of the request for forgiveness. And the question is, how far do you have to go before you finally release the person from their sin?
It's an excellent, excellent point. And I know everyone wants to talk. Is there anyone that didn't talk that I didn't call on?
The rabbi, you know, I was thinking about the image, the act of the rabbi getting off the donkey to prostrate himself to the level of himself. The imagery of Asian communities where they greet themselves, they bow. And the level of bowing, you know, shows respect to the other person. You bow lower. I think the rabbi also showed respect to him as well, you know, from that, not just apologizing, but adding that to the respect. And imagery, like I said, of the Asian community and the bowing kind of came to mind. You know, so you know, and I sort of think our way we ask for forgiveness.
So I think I can sort of, I don't know about defending the rabbi, but I think the person, yes, reminded the rabbi that what he said was hurtful, and the rabbi acknowledged, yep, okay, I made a mistake. The person insisted, however, to continue with the punishment and the public shaming in some sense, because he came and told the story. And so he provided, so the person said, look, this person did this to me. You're calling him a rabbi, but look at what this person did to me. That's the sort of public shaming, the public punishment. And he also needs to learn that at some point, there is nothing to be gained by not forgiving. He does forgive, but with a little bit of reluctance. All right, you guys are pressuring me to do this. But, and I can imagine someone says, well, you think highly of this person because he's your rabbi or your teacher, and you're sort of pressuring me. Yes, I need to learn that, okay, at some point, holding on to that grudge or holding on to not forgiving is going to be, you know, at what point does that hurt me more than the other person? But it's also at some point being pressured to have to forgive. Is that forgiveness really earnest? And is it because this person has a title?
Right.
You know, and why, you know, how is that forgiveness provided?
Okay.
And is that fair to the rabbi?
Right. So with that, Dad, you put it very, very well. And Tommy, you can tell me after we are done, because we will have to leave. There is a point that we don't have the same expectations from everyone. And sometimes when we are parents, like the expectations that we have from our own family are much higher than we have like from someone else. So the reason I wanted to bring this story, and we didn't do the Mishnah, so maybe next Yom Kippur when, or maybe we can get together in some point, it's I want us to think when we actually, you know, we are all day asking for forgiveness and I'm expecting for forgiveness and I'm expecting that someone will come and forgive us. I want us to struggle with the concept of forgiveness. It's not an easy concept. It's not easy to forgive. It's not easy to ask for forgiveness. It's not always that clear who has to do what. And when we do Ashamnu Bagadnu, we don't have to be that hard on ourselves. We have to think of the image of a reed versus a cedar. And we have to think about the different perspectives and steps. And titles don't actually entitle to have more expectation from the person who has the title. When someone makes a mistake, it's a mistake. Of course, we shouldn't make mistakes, but we do. And when we do, it's what we do after that. It's what's going to define us as people, as persons. So with that in mind, and I'm very, very sorry if I missed anyone or if someone wanted to say something. I'm always available to talk on the phone, but via email. I miss you all. I just want us to go with that in mind and to struggle with the concept of forgiveness for the rest of the day. So the forgiveness and the asking for atonement should be meaningful to all of us. Thank you humbly. I am humble and honored to be able to teach you, to learn from you, and to learn with you. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Yashikar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank